Okay.
We are live. We're
Well,
live today.
Hey everybody, I'm Attilio. Who are you?
And I'm Adrienne.
And Adrian, and we got a special guest on today's live streaming. We're coming to you on, what is it, 2 Facebook, 1 YouTube, and 1 LinkedIn.
Yes. We're coming
And
to you on
multiple platforms. Okay, so live streaming, what we want to talk to you guys about today is the Delaware Statutory Trust, or a DST, and how you get your money into a DST is through a 1031 exchange. And
we have Julie Bratton. We've got Julie Bratton here as our experts in the intermediary, as we call it, where you've got to have that third party in there to just
help you with that.
Hold on to that money so you don't get taxed.
So, with that in mind, I'll just play a little short video and then we'll get right to it to our guests. Stay with us.
The tool that we use is a Delaware Statutory Trust, which is basically a securitized real estate investment that qualifies under the 1031 exchange rules.
Because you don't have to qualify for the loan, legally you can't be held liable for it. You get all the benefits of the loan, but none of the risk. Most DSTs come with varying loan-to-value amounts, and the reason why we mix and match the loan-to-values is so that we can diversify your investment to kind of mix and match your existing loan-to-value if you need to.
Imagine if you held onto the property, COVID happens, and tenant leaves, right? And having to fly in the middle of COVID-19 to fix the place up, find a new tenant. Almost COVID your income.
Well, that was a very special intro, very upbeat. Yeah. Thank you for that. And welcome, Julie. We are really excited to have you. We had you on our radio show, and now here we are. We get to see you and interact with you here on a live stream.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
For Friday.
So, give us your story. How long you been doing this with these 1031 exchanges?
Well, it's funny you should ask. This last May, I have been with Old Republic Exchange for 20 years. So yes, I've been doing this for 20 years. Time flies by when you love your job.
You must have started when you were like 10.
Yeah, I had 12, but close. Yes, it's been a long time, but it's great. It's been a lot of fun over the years, helping people, save on taxes, defer paying capital gains tax, and move their real estate around. It's been really great.
So I would say that you have a mastery level of experience with this 1031 exchange tax code and strategy that we are going to be talking about today.
I always say everybody has a story, but the rules are still the same. So it's like how do we get everybody's scenario or situation in the perfect or close to perfect box to do an exchange. So that's the fun part.
Yeah, I like what you just said. Everybody's got a story, but it's not called the tax story. It's called the tax code, right?
Yeah.
You got to follow the rules.
Good point.
Now, I know that like during the election years, there's always talk of, this 1031 exchange being eliminated and all sorts of, concern about that, possibly happening. Like, what have you seen over the last 20 years as far as this 1031 exchange and...
We've pretty much looked at it like this. For the last 20 years or so, every new administration that comes in always puts 1031 on the block, tries to get rid of it, tries to modify it, and it just doesn't happen. I mean, obviously, it is a form or a source of revenue for them, for the economy, but also it would be devastating for the economy on this other side of the token. So we don't really see it happening. There's no bill out for it yet. It's a lot of chatter. Doesn't mean it wouldn't happen or something wouldn't happen or it wouldn't modify, but right now we're not worried about it.
Yeah, I think that one and the mortgage, the homeowner's exemption for when they're selling, those seem to be the two that
They keep coming up.
Yeah.
those people over there in DC. I think that would warrant people storming the Capitol and saying, not just because
There's a lot
Trump
of things. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, they haven't modified the 250, 500 personal residence exemptions for years. I mean, when I started selling real estate, I think it was a once in a lifetime 125,000 exemption. So this 250 and 500,000 is great. So we'll see, but we're not particularly worried about the 1031.
Okay, so let's just go with the basics. We'll go with the basics because we were talking with a client the other day. They owned the property for, I don't know, 30, 40 years. They had no idea what they weren't living in it. I think they've been renting it out for the last 10 years, and they had never heard of a 1031 exchange, and I was surprised. But tell
So we're
us.
excited to have you here so that you can help educate on what is this 1031 exchange and how do we use it?
All right. Well, a 1031 exchange is a way to defer paying capital gains tax. And it's just for the sale and the purchase of investment properties. So you need to sell investment property and buy investment property within a specific period of time. So I get a call every single day. Can I sell my investment residence? Or can I sell my personal residence and buy an investment property? Just know that it's always investment for investment. And you also be selling and buying like-kind property in an exchange. And like-kind, many people who read up on the exchange take it very literal. They think it has to be condo for condo, single family for single family, vacant land for vacant land, which all of those examples are fine, but it's really any combination of real property that qualifies. So, not only do people do exchanges to defer paying capital gains tax, that's the number one reason, but also to diversify and leverage their real estate portfolio. So you can set and do estate planning. So you can sell a commercial building and buy 4 condos if you want. You can sell a single family home and buy an industrial building. You can sell a condo, buy a single family home. So as long as it's real property, you can do an exchange with it.
So you can mix and match.
Right. A lot of people though think they take the word like kind very literal. So it needs to be investment for investment. It needs to be real property for real property. An example of not real property is, and I get this every once in a while, a mobile home. If it's affixed to the ground, it's real property. But if you can drive off with it, it's not. What
if you remove the wheels, though? Would that be considered?
People ask me that all the You can ask your CPA about that. I'm not going out there with a hard hat and checking it out. But I have had people snap pictures of it and send it to me. Is it affixed? And I was like, you got to ask your CPA.
Well, that reminds me of the old saying, how do you know you're a redneck when your home has wheels? And so, and how do you know you can't do a 1031 exchange? Your home has wheels. Your investment property has wheels. Yeah. So,
and another thing with an exchange that is important for people to understand is if you have to reinvest both your basis and your gain when you do an exchange. So if you sell a home for $700,000, it's investment. You need to buy $700,000 worth of investment property. It's equal to or greater than the sales price. A lot of folks think that, or in the mindset that they only need to reinvest their gain or the profit from that actual sale because they're so fixated on deferring capital gains tax, it's automatic almost for them to just focus on that number. But it's equal to or greater than the sales price, not just the profit, not just the gain. Now and then you can buy more than one property. I mean, you can sell one and buy 3. You can sell 3 and buy 1 to get to your 700, but you just to have 100% deferral, it's equal to or greater than.
And then there's some real particular rules as well, right? As far as the timelines that you do this strategy within. Can you go over that and why that's so important, Julie?
Sure. So there is a lot of gray area in exchanges, but there's some black and white for sure, and that is the timelines. So let's say you're selling your relinquished property, the investment property you're selling, and it closes today. The clock would start ticking today. You have 45 days from the day you close to identify what you're going to buy in writing, and 180 days to close on this. Now, the 45 days is included in the 180, so you don't get 45 and then an additional 180. So it's a total of 180. But in the first 45, they have to identify in writing what they're going to buy. And there's no extensions on these timeframes, and these timeframes include holidays and weekends. So if 45 days lands on Easter, you need to identify by midnight of Easter. If 180 days lands on Christmas, you got to close on Christmas Eve or even maybe the day before. So you can't rely on the 181st day or a weekend being there or anything like that. So it's very strict.
So with these really very strict guidelines and our kind of crazy market as far as the inventory, what would be some good strategies that our investors could look at as far as identifying properties and
45 days right now is incredibly stressful for a lot of people. And I tell people, don't take it personally. It's happening all over the country. Every state, everybody I talk to, every exchanger that I'm working with right now is stressed out about the 45 days. So one thing I like to tell them is when you list the property, or maybe even before you're listing the property, start shopping around for the areas and the properties and the projects or even the states that you like or you don't like. So when you're in your 45 days, you're feeling pretty good because you have the listing period. You have the escrow period, which I call kind of the pre-period. Take advantage of that.
Yes.
And for sure, because once you close, if you start looking, it's going to be really hard. It's super swift out there. And I also tell people, I think people get really stuck in the 45 days because they're looking for the perfect property. And I have to kind of, and I always ask them, I don't think they may be in this mindset, but if they are, you're not going to marry the property. You're not stuck with the property that you buy. You can find a perfect property. Great. Of course, don't buy a piece of junk. But if you had to make a lateral move just to defer paying the capital gains tax, do it. Make a lateral move, defer paying those taxes, hold on to it for a year or so. And if you still don't like it, you could always sell it and do an exchange into something else when things calm down or you find that perfect property. And I hope that brings people down a notch a little bit. Because I think they just we got to find perfect, and
well, you can identify up to 3 properties, right?
Right. So there's 2 ways to identify. The first way, the most common way, is 3, and you may only intend to buy 1, but you can put a couple backups down just in case, like a DST. But you can buy 1, 2, all 3, or all 3, as long as you buy something equal to or greater than what you sell your relinquished property for. You're good. If you want to identify more than 3, it automatically pushes you into what we call the 200% rule. And that is where you can identify 4 properties or more, but the fair market value of the entire list combined cannot exceed double of what you sell the relinquished property for. So if you sell something for $1 million and you want to identify 4 properties or more, you can, but that list, the whole list combined, cannot exceed 1 penny over $2 million. So it's like you can't go out and identify all of Kapolei and pick one later.
Can you?
I've never heard of this before.
Can you swap properties that you're identifying?
I'm sorry?
Can you swap out the properties that you've identified? Let's say you don't like those 3 and you wanted to go with a different 3.
You can make as many changes as you want within the 45 days. You can give me a new one every day if you want to. And believe me, I've gotten them. But on the 45th day, I need the final list of what you think you're going to buy because you cannot change or swap out after the 45 days.
Gotcha.
And that's why it's good to have that DST as a plan B or just one of those properties that you're identifying just in case things, they don't work out with the properties that you think you're going to get into escrow with.
Right. Those DSTs are becoming increasingly popular. They were a thing, years back, and then they kind of drooped off a little bit. And now they're really, really more relevant now, and people are really looking at it. I think people had a little bit of an aversion because they like to, drive by their investment and smell it, touch it, and feel it. And now they're looking at a more
I
hands-off.
think, you know what I like? I like looking at my checking account and seeing the money come in. So
they don't want to deal with tenants, trash, and
yeah,
toilets.
you know what I do? I drive by Bank of Hawaii. I'm like, oh, my passive income is over there. Okay, hi, Bank of Hawaii. Then I go home.
Yeah. So yeah, it's becoming increasingly popular, and a lot of people are using it as a backup, or maybe not even a backup, maybe just their choice.
That's the choice. So I just want to give a quick reminder that to everybody, you can register. We've got our next DST seminar coming up June 17th, is why I was showing that on the screen. But what else?
So we had talked briefly, I think, on the radio show about something that's maybe not as common and maybe a little bit more costly, but especially with this kind of market that we're in, the reverse exchange. What is that, Julie, and why would someone use it?
Okay. So for a regular exchange is sell first and then buy. And from a fee perspective, you want to do that. But a reverse is if you want to buy first and then sell. So let's say you find a property that's to die for and you have to have it, and you haven't been able to sell your relinquished property yet. That is a reverse exchange. So remember, in a regular exchange, your down payment comes from the sale of your relinquished property. If you buy first, you have to come up with some cash. Okay, the minimum cash required down when you buy first is what you anticipate netting from the sale of your relinquished property. So you have to be able to have some cash to be able to come up with that. And what happens is the exchange company, takes title to one of the properties, because you can never own both your sale and your purchase property at the same time. And then you'll have 180 days to sell your relinquished property. And when it sells, you get your money back, and you can replenish or pay off wherever you got it from. And we sell the property to the new buyer, and it's done. So in a reverse exchange, people use it if they're really stressed out and they can't find a replacement property, or they really do want to find that perfect property. There is an option for you to buy first. It's higher fee, and you have to be able to come up with some cash. And if that can happen, great. If that can't happen, you might have to wait.
And how often, Julie, are you seeing this reverse exchange happening in this market?
Well, it's funny. I'm seeing a lot of it. I'm seeing a lot of people. I'm seeing a lot of it, but I'm also seeing people starting the reverse exchange and then realize they can hurry up and turn it into a regular exchange, because they can sell that relinquished property fast. So in this market, if they find something that they love and it's to die for and they have to have it, if you can, try to make the offer on that property as far out as that seller will accept. Hurry up, relinquish property. Sorry?
Yeah, like a 60-day close or something.
Yeah. I mean, if they can, yeah. And then put the relinquished property on the market. You don't have to have a fire sale in this market. It should sell pretty quick if it's priced right, and try to have a simultaneous close.
Yeah.
But it's nice for people to just know about the reverse, because if they can do it, they can use that as a fallback. But again, from a fee perspective, if they can sell first and tighten up the closings, that would be ideal for them.
Well, one of the things that we add to the purchase contracts or listings is that the other side of the transaction, we put a 1031 addendum stating that they're going to cooperate. So it's always disclosed to the other parties so that they'll help out.
That's a good point that I should probably bring up more often. These addendums in the contracts. So if you're representing us, if you're selling or you're buying investment property and you're in an exchange, you need to disclose to the other side that you're doing an exchange. That's why you see addendums attached to the contracts or 1031 language under the special terms contingency. And it's just a disclosure. It's not a contingency. So sometimes the buyers and the sellers misinterpret it and they think it's a contingency. They'll say, oh, I don't want to be involved with that other person's tax stuff. If there's no cost or liability to me, why do I got to sign it? I mean, I get that, but just know and be very aware it's not a contingency unless, of course, they make it one.
Well, then instead of the word contingency, let's use the word courtesy. It's a matter of courtesy.
But they could make a contingency and make it subject to finding replacement property.
Right. If that's a different story. But if it's just a disclosure, it's just a disclosure. But some people who don't do this every day, buyers and sellers, they're not involved in these contracts. They read 1031 and they go, oh, I don't want to be a part of that. But it's
that
just
would cost me extra money or extra hassle.
Exactly. It has nothing to do with the close and any contingencies within the contract. It's just a disclosure.
Now,
of course, like you're right, Adrian, when if someone says we're doing a 1031 exchange and this contract is contingent upon the successful closing of my relinquished property, now that's a different story.
Yeah.
But there's a difference. So, it's good for you guys to know about that.
Well, let's talk about the costs. I mean, what kind of costs are people looking at to do something like this?
Regular exchanges.
Yeah.
We set it up as you pay as you go. So they start at $950 when you sell and $575 when you buy the replacement property. So for example, if they don't find a replacement property, obviously we're not going to charge them for the second half of the transaction.
Yeah. And do you guys do late checkout? No, I'm just kidding. I was thinking that like the transaction
late checkout equals capital gains taxes, and that's a pretty hefty fee. So no late checkouts.
No continental breakfast. No. Okay. And people need to put that into context. I mean, you guys are, you're saving them literally, could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital gains taxes that they can put into the next property.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff that you got to keep track of, or we don't. We've been doing this for 15 years. We didn't even know about the reverse exchange.
Yeah. People look at exchange, and I think they have this idea that all we do is hold the money, but it is a huge orchestration and coordination that is behind the scenes. I mean, we are answering your phone calls every day and your emails and the exchangers' phone calls and their emails. And we do all of the coordinating with escrow. We review contracts and title reports. We track the deadlines. We process identification notices. We're wiring money, deposits. Like it's an incredible, machine behind it all. It's not just holding the money. So they're saving hundreds of thousands of dollars. So
worth call it not an expense but an investment, and worth it.
And you can write it off as part of your selling process. It's a write-off.
It's an allowable expense. So why wouldn't you do it and get all that protection? It is an unregulated field, and anybody can have a business card printed up and saying they're a qualified intermediary. So when I hear someone's going to charge $300 in some other state, I have a list of questions for them to ask. They don't have to be licensed, bonded to be a qualified intermediary.
That's scary.
Exactly. And you're handing over hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars for a qualified intermediary to hold that who probably works out of his garage and doesn't have to have this bonding or licensing at all. So it's important that clients understand who they're dealing with.
And Julie is the only people that we recommend with Old Republic Exchange. We don't recommend anybody else. A lot of times people say, recommend 3 people. No, we don't do that. We just pick the best person and recommend them. And we've been recommending you for, I don't know, it's probably as long as you've been doing it.
Over a decade.
Yes.
Over a decade. And,
thank you. I appreciate that. Like I said, I love my job. It's great. It's very busy right now. There's lots of things going on.
Yeah.
So you guys are great. You're always on top of it.
For the people that charge $300, the red flag is when they misspell the word intermediary on the business card. So watch out for that. What else kind of mistakes are going to be making?
I love that. That's
thank you for taking something that's not super exciting, but making it fun because you're involved with it and you're the people person, people part of it, and always readily available. I know we had one that was kind of going sideways a little bit. We got Julie on the phone. She kind of helped bring some clarity to the client, because here's one of the things for you realtors out there or people doing this: don't be the expert. Be the
source of the source.
Be the source of the source.
Make the connection to Julie.
So, any funny stories or any success story you want to share with us before we wrap it up?
Oh, well, I do have a kind of a cool story. It has to do with seller financing, actually. So in the beginning of COVID, I didn't know you were going to ask me this question, so I'm really pulling it out of the air here, but it was a cool story. I had this lady, she was doing an exchange and she had $200,000 to defer, and she was buying her replacement property. And well, actually, I'll tell you a different story. I have a lady and it was on her 44th day. And she calls me on her 44th day and says, I can't find anything. I'm too stressed out. I'm just going to cancel the exchange and pay my taxes. And she had $200,000 to defer. And I said to her, and she said to me, I'm so picky. And, I like to ask a lot of questions. I poke holes. I just try to find the whole story so I can actually give good guidance. And she said, I'm so picky. So I said to her, well, why are you so picky? And she goes, well, I just am. And I go, well, look, you're not going to marry the property. She was in that finding the perfect property mode. You're not going to marry the property. Well, and of course, don't buy a piece of junk, but why don't you just make a lateral move? And then, if you still don't like it in a year or so, you can sell it and do another exchange. And she goes, well, I am being extra picky because I am going to eventually live in it. And I said, well, when is that going to happen? And she goes, I don't know, 5 or 7 years. I'm like, a lot can happen in 5 or 7 years. Like, I know you're trying to find perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect right now. And so she goes, okay, let me think about it. She hangs up, and on her 45th day, she called me back and she identified something and she bought it.
Oh, wow.
I thought that was a really good story because she just needed to look at it a different way. Like, she has an opportunity to find the perfect if she can, but she also has an opportunity to get an interim property, try it out. And if she doesn't like it, enough years before she retires and get in. And I just thought it was a great story. And just having these extra conversations and asking a few extra questions with the clients, it really can change the tone of the transaction quickly.
So Julie saved the day and helped save the client probably about 60 grand in.
Yeah, she had 200,000 to defer, so it was good.
Yeah, no, she was confusing the home purchase with her husband because she was on the 5th husband. No, she wasn't doing that.
Julie brought clarity though.
Her follow-up was like, can I do that with my husband? Can I do a 1031 exchange with my husband? No, you got to keep them.
Everybody has a reason for buying and selling real estate. It's interesting. And once you get to that, that trigger, it's so much easier to guide them.
I think what you did was you came from curiosity, you asked more questions and brought some clarity to her perspective in the situation. And 5 to 7 years from now, right? You know what? 5 to 7 years from now, maybe you want to live in a different type of property. Maybe you want to live in a different city. Then you go take that property now and go exchange it into the property that you want to eventually live in. So
right. But when there was so much time in between these transactions, I was like, who cares?
Yeah, and then just to be so frazzled to just that we find that with a lot of times with clients, they'll make we call it making a weak decision in a weak moment, and so we try and bring some calmness to the situation so that they can kind of take a couple of deep breaths and go, really, you don't want to be paying all those capital gains tax, so good job, you were the superhero in that moment.
You were the calm.
Yeah. The frenzy is really something right now. So people just really have to just slow down and think about it for a second.
Yeah. So I guess, what, from all these years working with you, and the number one piece of advice that I've heard you say is just tell people, call you right away. Please, they're thinking about it. Call you. Not when the house is, not when you're in escrow and you're scrambling.
Call anytime. I'll always respond, and I might have some extra questions before I can give you the answer, just because maybe I don't have enough information, but I'll always respond.
And this contact information at the bottom, this is the best way to call you and email you?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Absolutely.
All right, well.
Thank you, Julie.
Thanks for having me. This has been great.
It was fun. Let's do it again.
We'll do it again. We can do a different topic next time. There's lots of topics. Exchanges have legs. So there's lots of different topics we can do with the show.
We'll leave them wanting more. Then stay tuned for our next live when Julie comes back on, and she's going to be talking about the different legs, kind of like an octopus. It's like 8 different legs, suction cups, everything about 1031 exchanges.